And we're recording. So, hello everyone, I'm Ramen Powder, and I'm here for the first ever audio/video version of the Sand Marble Rally Power Rankings. And I'm the person who, if you don't know me, I'm Ramen Powder, and I've been writing the power rankings for the Sand Marble Rally over the past few weeks after every race. And I did it up until race 6, and I was going to do it for race 7, but then I just didn't have enough time. I was too busy, and race 8 uploaded. And then I thought, okay, I'll just upload it. I'll just post the rankings. I'll get them done a few hours after race 8 is published. And I can just post it and we can pretend race 8 hasn't happened yet. But then I wasn't able to do that either. And then I realized that um I don't think I will be able to consistently pour hours and hours of effort into writing the entries and making them will look well written and whatnot. Because my final exams are coming in May and I have to devote more time to prepare for them. But I didn't want to completely abandon this, so I thought this would be a good compromise and a good way to still get my thoughts out there on which marbles are performing well and which marbles should be ranked above others. So I thought this would be a good way to do it. And this is going to be low effort. I haven't planned much stuff before recording besides just having the videos up, my rankings up, um, and like some of the standings so I can refer to them. And the whole point of this is so that I can still get my ideas across to whoever wants to listen to them rather than having to write them in like the written format. And we're gonna go through race 7 and race 8 in this particular video, or this particular ranking video. Yeah, I suppose this is the video. There won't be much on the screen, but what I've decided to do is I'm going to put the Sand Marble Rally profiles, athlete profiles, on screen when I'm talking about each competitor. And these profiles, they're very well made. You'll see them very shortly, but they're made by Joker. If you know him on Discord, he is the one who makes all the logos for all the custom marble competitions, including mine. And he's just very great at visuals, and you should seriously check out his work if you haven't already. And so they're gonna be what I can use to put on the screen while I'm talking about the marbles, and it also gives me a chance to shout out his work. So before we get into it, we're going to go over race 7 and race 8, and I have a ranking for race 7, but we're going to go in the order of my ranking after race 8. So whoever is ranked 16th first will go them, and then 15th, and so on. But I'll also mention where they were ranked after race 7, just for your information. So in 16th, it is red number 3, and I know some people aren't going to be happy to hear this, but actually I ranked red number 3 16th as well after race 7. But before race 7, after race 6, they were ranked 11th. And then they dropped 5 to 16th, and then stayed in 16th. And red number 3, they've had a very poor season as a whole, but particularly the last few races. They DNF'd in race 7, getting bumped by Blizzard Blaster. And I think that DNF in race 7, if you go and see it, it happened at about the minute mark. They had a good starting position in race 7. They started in P6, and usually actually in this season, despite having a poor season, red number 3 is able to get a good start. We saw it in the qualifiers. They got a great start, and the course was pretty narrow, so they were able to hold that position very well, and only lost it to Ducktape, I think, and got in second, and still easily qualified. And we've seen it in some of the previous races as well. Red number 3 is able to get a good start from a good starting position. And then it just, in the second half of the race, they just can't keep up, or they lose speed, or they get bumped, or they DNF. And then they lose a chance of a podium or some good points. And in this race, in race 7, I don't think that really happened. They had a good starting position in P6, but then they immediately fell to the middle part, like the 9th, 10th position, and from P6, that means they had a bad start. And then they, at about 1 minute, that's when Blizzard Blaster hit them over the hairpin, and then they go off and DNF. And while it sounds a bit unlucky, like it's a bit out of their control, I do think red number 3 is partially at fault for dropping down before that, all the way down to like the 13th, 14th spot, to be put in that position to get DNF'd. And so I still think this was a poor race from Red number 3, even if it wasn't entirely in their control whether they finished or not. For race 8, they were in 11th. They started at P11 in the back row, so you can't really expect them to do that much. And they didn't do that much. They had a decent start in this race. They were closer to the mid pack from a bad starting position. That's pretty good. But then they never really got out. They never really got ahead of any, like 8th or 7th. And I don't even think they were on screen for that long. But they did get 12th. There were 14 finishers in race 8, not as much of a race of attrition as race 7, which had 5 finishers. But still, 12 out of just 14 marbles means that they weren't that fast out there, even if they did manage to avoid a DNF. Red number 3, they're in last in the standings as well. They were ahead. Most of the marbles they were ahead of in the rankings have done like much better in the past few races. Like, not just better than red number 3, but better than a lot of marbles even higher up the standings. So I think red number 3, I'm not the biggest supporter of red number 3. I try to be unbiased in these rankings. But I think it's like, if you've read my rankings, you'll know that I support Slimer as my number 1. I also like Pollo Loco, Blizzard Blaster, Deep Ocean, Dragon's Egg. Those two haven't qualified. But red number 3, I'm not the hugest supporter because of the whole, different material from 2017 to 2019. But particularly for the glass red number 3. I think that this season definitely has been very poor for them. It doesn't really showcase their true ability. I think they've underperformed a bit. If you went back to season 5, they did get a pretty convincing win in race 7 in the snow race, and then they also had a couple of seconds as well, and they finished 7th overall out of 20, which is good. It's not even just like middle of the pack. That's good out of 20. So I think red number 3, even if they finish like 16th or 15th, or even if they get up to 12th, which they're still pretty close to, they can hope to do a bit better next season if they qualify. If they don't qualify, that's a whole different story. But anyway, I've waffled enough about red number 3. Let's move on to 15th. And in 15th, I've put Blizzard Blaster. Blizzard Blaster started off very well, I think. Or not very well, but at least like comfortably ahead of most of these marbles that are in the bottom few like placements in the rankings and the standings. But it's all like gone wrong in the last few races. Blizzard Blaster is one of 3 marbles that doesn't have a podium. The others being red number 3 and Cobra. And red number 3 is significantly underperforming. Cobra is Cobra. Blizzard Blaster started the season with a pair of 7th. I think they got a 5th recently. They did get a 5th, yes, in race 6. They had a good starting position for race 6, but a 5th is a 5th. It is still pretty good. And I think that particularly is the reason why I have them over red number 3 right now, because they've been very poor in the past 2 races, like red number 3. In race 7, Blizzard Blaster, they finished 11th. But Blizzard Blaster was the last of the finishers because there was 5 DNFs. And if you look at the timings, Blizzard Blaster, they were 8 seconds off the leader. And Grasshopper in 10th was only 5.57. So Blizzard Blaster is over 2 seconds behind the next marble, Grasshopper. So despite finishing the course and still getting 5 points from it, Blizzard Blaster, that 11th isn't your average 11th. It was definitely a very poor performance, and it kind of doesn't give me confidence that they'll be able to get a better placement later because of how slow they were. And in race 8, that is when they didn't finish. They and Ghost Plasma were the only 2 DNFs in race 8. And I think this DNF is a bit more down to bad luck because, they were just unfortunate to get wedged in that spinner thing with Ghost Plasma, and so yeah. But it's still a DNF. A DNF is a DNF, even if you're having like the race of your like Silver Bolt in race 7. We'll get to them. They DNF from the lead. But a DNF is a DNF, and Blizzard Blaster has dropped to, I think, 14th in the standings, only ahead of Cobra and red number 3. And Cobra has been doing much better as of late. We'll get to them shortly. So Blizzard Blaster, their starting position, before we move on, their starting position in race 7 was and actually at the beginning of race 7 they actually were in a decent top half of the position, so you could see their descent was more over time. Yeah, but their starting position was 8th, so that's front row. They had a good spot, or decent spot at least, and they got 11th, so that's not good. And that means that they should have been in 9th for race 8. But now, enough about Blizzard Blaster. I think the marbles around them, besides red number 3, as of late have done much better. So let's get to them. But before we get to them, actually, in 14th, I don't have Cobra. I don't have Wisp of Darkness. We have Cool Moody. And Cool Moody has had a very poor past 2 races, just like the 2 below them. But they were much higher after race 6. Between like race 5 and race 6, I remember Cool Moody was kind of in no marbles land. Like they were behind the top 7. That was like much more separated from the bottom 8 or so, and they were kind of like by themselves. So it seemed like they were cruising to like a middle of the pack finish overall. But then they DNF'd in race 7. They didn't even have that good of a starting position. They were in 10th in race 7. And then towards the end, when Silverbolt was leading, they DNF at a low walled section, kind of. And then Cool Moody goes off at the same place. And they were in like 3rd. Cool Moody, they were in 4th when Silverbolt was leading, and then Silverbolt DNF, so they got 3rd, and then they DNF'd straight away. And it looks like, I know some people have mentioned this, I know it looks like Pollo Loco pushed Cool Moody off the course, but actually it seems like Cool Moody was on their way off, and Pollo Loco just kind of sped up the process, because you could see right before Pollo Loco nudges them, Cool Moody is like kind of teetering on the edge, and it looks like they just have the momentum to go off the course and not return. So I think that DNF is on them, frankly, and kind of wasted a good result, which would have been a really good result from a bad starting position. So they had a better starting position for race 8, but they couldn't really make much use of it because they got 14th. They had a good start, but then just fell back. So they got 14th, last of the finishers in race 8 because there were 2 DNFs. And I think they've done worse than some of the marbles around them as well. Cool Moody is now in 12th in the standings overall, in a tie with Wisp of Darkness with 44 points, but just 4 points ahead of red number 3, who's in last in the standings. So that bottom 5, those 5 that can't podium overall, they're all very close, and any of them could easily take the lead in that bottom 5 race to get out of the bottom 4 in the next race. But Cool Moody, they don't have the form to do it. Someone who does in 13th is Cobra. I think Cobra has been very impressive for their standards as of late. Cobra, coming into the season, they were easily the worst marble in my opinion. I think Cobra is in contention for the worst Marble Valley marble, along with Blue Moon, Blazing Fireball, and Green Turtle. And none of those other 3 qualified, so really Cobra had to be around 16th coming into this season. And for a while it looked like, yeah, they weren't performing any better than what they were expected. They were hanging in the bottom with Wisp of Darkness for a while. And then, I think in race 6, we got a glimpse of what Cobra could do, because they got 9th. And I think they didn't do it from a very high starting position either. If I'm not mistaken. I don't have race 6 up right now. But in race 7 genuinely might be one of Cobra's best races. That is counting their win last season, because I think that was kind of a fluke win. But the reason I say this, Cobra finished 6th, and they did it by starting P14. Look who's under Cobra. Ghost Plasma in race 7 got 7th. Cobra got 6th. Cobra outperformed Ghost Plasma from a worse starting position, and they outperformed Superball too, because Superball got 8th. You don't see that a lot. I think Cobra really, really did well in race 7. And I think they got a good start and just was able to maintain it, which is something we haven't seen from them much of in the past. So Cobra clearly did a lot better, but that was one race, and they were very poor before that. So I only moved them up to 14th after race 7. And then after race 8, I moved them one up again to 13th. I think race 8 wasn't as good for them. They also got 9th, just like in race 6. They did it from a good starting position, so I don't think race 8 was that great for them. But 9th isn't that bad. For Cobra standards, it's not that bad, and I think it's good enough to put them ahead of Cool Moody, Blizzard Blaster, and Red Number 3, all of which who have not had a good few races. Now Cobra was hanging with Wisp of Darkness for a while, and those were my bottom 2 for a bit, but I haven't got Wisp of Darkness in 12th because they are coming later, and they have done even better than Cobra in the past few races. In 12th, I have put Reflektor. Reflektor has been kind of anonymous in the past few races. In race 7, they got 11th. No, that's the standings. In race 7, they got 9th. And 9th out of 11 finishers shows that they weren't exactly the fastest out there. And they had a pretty good starting position too. They were in P5, so I don't think race 7 was a good race for them. And actually they rose up 2 spots in race 7, because race 6 is when they DNF'd. Race 6 is when they were one of 3 DNFs. So Reflektor after race 6 was pretty low. I think, yes, they were 13th. And then I moved them ahead of Cool Moody, Blizzard Blaster, Red Number 3, and then so they rose up 2. So I think one marble got ahead of them, behind them. That was behind them. They got ahead of them. But Reflektor, in race 7, they didn't have a good race 7, and in race 8, they had a worse starting position and also got 11th. So Reflektor hasn't done much as of late, but I think due to some other marbles doing worse, some other marbles doing better, I don't think Reflektor should be moved all that much, and that's why they only dropped from 11th in after race 7 to 12th after race 8. I think Wisp of Darkness, who is below them, has done good enough to overtake them, and we'll get to them lately. And Reflektor has also been hanging with Grasshopper, which we'll also get to. But I think Grasshopper has just been better recently. They got the podium in race 6. Reflektor got the podium in race 4, had a good race 5 too, if I recall. But yeah, hasn't been too exciting. And now, after Reflektor, in 11th, Wisp of Darkness or Grasshopper, it is Grasshopper. Grasshopper has been right with Reflektor. After race 7, I put Grasshopper 1 spot ahead of Reflektor, because I was still riding over some of that success that they had from race 6. They had a very good race 6, got silver, their first ever podium, and rose up to like 9th in the standings. And then in race 7, they got 10th, and only ahead of Blizzard Blaster amongst the finishers. In race 7, let's take a look. They started 7th, so they started in a pretty good position. To get 10th means that they didn't have a good race, and they were actually right behind Reflektor too, who also didn't have a good race. And then in race 8, Grasshopper got 10th, and because they started 7th in race 7, they should have started 10th in race 10. So really, they just had the most average race possible. They started 10th, finished 10th, and I think they've, like, some of that success from race 6 still, it's recent enough for me to put them ahead of Reflektor, despite being about the same amount of, like, anonymous as Reflektor. But yeah, so Grasshopper is going to be 11th. And that means Wisp of Darkness, after being in 15th after race 7, only ahead of Red Number 3 in my rankings, they have gone up to 10th. And they've gone up 5 spots in just one entry. But I actually think this is a product of both race 7 and race 8. Wisp of Darkness has had a great 2 races. I think they might be one of the highest scoring marbles. Or it might be Crazy Cat's Eye, who we'll also get to. But Wisp of Darkness, they got fourth in race 7, and they got it from P16. They had, I think, one of the worst starting positions. I actually think 15th on this course is the worst starting position because I think the course is slightly favored to the right because of how the first part of the course is. But Wisp of Darkness, 16th is still a terrible starting position, and for a marble who is doing as bad as Wisp of Darkness, you would not expect them to do so well at the beginning. They took great lines at the beginning of race 7 to get in the mid pack, and then they just keep staying out of trouble. And in race 7, when you stay out of trouble and there's marbles ahead of you and they just keep DNFing, you just capitalize just by staying on the course. And that's what Wisp of Darkness did. Wisp of Darkness, they were able to stay out of trouble, which is kind of uncharacteristic for them considering how much they like to shovel their marbles off the course and stuff in this season, to get 4th in race 7. And then in race 8, they have a good starting position. They had obviously P1, which is one of the best starting positions all the time, pretty much. And they didn't get a podium, but they still got 5th, and I still think it's a decent race for them. Starting first doesn't really mean that if you finish any lower than first, it's gonna be worse, because it's not like Marbula 1 where you're starting first and there's only one marble alongside you. There's still 7 other marbles on the front row. So to get 5th, it wasn't amazing. I think race 7 was definitely better for Wisp of Darkness, but it was still good enough to make me think that they've built this momentum, and it's like strong enough to put them ahead of Grasshopper, Reflektor, Moody, Cobra, everyone else. And so Wisp of Darkness goes up to 10th. They're in 13th right now in the standings, just behind Moody, just based on tiebreaker alone, but only 5 points behind Reflektor and 6 behind Grasshopper in the standings. They can easily get up into the lower part of the mid pack with a good result again. And so that's gonna be it for Wisp of Darkness in 10th. In 9th, I've put Lollipop. And Lollipop in race 7 and race 8. Lollipop in race 7, they had a great race as well. They got 3rd, and they got 3rd from P15. So Wisp of Darkness got 4th from P16. I think P15 was even worse of a starting position, and I'm pretty sure you can see it because because Lollipop in race 7 starts off in the back, and you can't really expect them from P15 and what I think was the worst position to do anything more than that at the beginning. But Lollipop was able to, like Wisp of Darkness, stay out of trouble, capitalize off the DNFs, and just get ahead of the few marbles behind them at the end. I think that's what they did. Like Wisp of Darkness, Crazy Cat's Eye, and Cobra, I think were all fighting with Lollipop for P3 at the end, and Lollipop was able to just keep it clean, make some good maneuvers, and snag that podium. And after such a poor start at the beginning, Lollipop, it looked like this was going to be a pretty uncharacteristically bad season for Lollipop, but they've really turned it around in the last few races. Not just race 7. You can see in race 6, they got 8th, which was decent. Race 5, they got 5th. Race 4, and that's when they DNF. So race 5 is really when Lollipop started to really put in those decent performances, get those points, and rack it up consistently. And so their recent form has been really good. But then in race 8, I think race 8, it wasn't amazing. They got 6th, but they got it from P2, and I think P2 was the best starting position. So to get 6th, I'm not incredibly impressed, but it could have been a lot worse for sure. 6th is not bad whatsoever. There are a few marbles. I think Lollipop has comfortably done enough in the past few races to be ahead of Wisp of Darkness because they also have good form, does Lollipop. And so just the last 2 races for Wisp of Darkness isn't enough to get ahead of Lollipop when Lollipop's also been doing pretty well. But Lollipop, I haven't put ahead of anyone else in the top 8 because they've either done really, really well at the beginning of the season and established them as much better over the course of the whole season, or they've also had even better form as of late, like Crazy Cat's Eye, who finished Well, actually, we'll get to them later because they are not in 8th. In 8th is Silverbolt. And Silverbolt, this is, despite being the first entry in the top half, this is not going to be a very positive review of Silverbolt because Silverbolt has kind of fell off a cliff, to put it lightly. Not to put it lightly, but you know what I mean. Silverbolt, in race 7, of course, they had the lead, looked like they were going to get the win. Ghost Plasma was nowhere. Superball also not really, nowhere really. And Silverbolt was leading, and it looks like they're going to gain on both of those top two and potentially get back in the championship fight. And then the DNF from the lead. And it's just devastating. If you're a Silverbolt fan, I'm so sorry for you because they had a great starting position too. So it wasn't that like they recovered from a bad starting position and they still had the next race to have a good starting position. They had P2, which I think was the best starting position for this course. So they had the best starting position. Everything looked like perfect up until, of course, the 1 minute 20 mark, and that's the most replayed part of the video because it was the most action packed. And that's when Silverbolt went off the course, blew away the 20 points, and because of that they fell to they fell to 5th, from 3rd to 5th after race 6 to race 7, and then after race 8 I've dropped them 3 more spots down to 8th. And really that's because what did they do in race 8? They got 13th, and they had the worst starting position, so you can't really expect Silverbolt to do a lot more. But if you want to maintain a good spot in the rankings, if it's like we're getting into the high spots now, for the low spots, getting 13th from starting 16th isn't that bad. But to maintain a high spot, Silverbolt hasn't done enough, and the marbles ahead of them have. They've either been also pretty good and have just not fallen off a cliff, or they've from the bottom they've caught up a lot by having a great string of few races. And Silverbolt, like you remember at the beginning of the season, many people, myself included, were kind of scared that Silverbolt was gonna pull away. They had the great first race from, I think, P16. They got up to P8. That's a great performance, at least for Silverbolt standards, because they were out of the A League for so long, and then they got the win in race 2, of course, ahead of Slimer, my beloved Slimer, and then they got a podium from a poor spot again, I think P15 in race 3. And then going into race 4, Silverbolt leading the championship, has the best spot, had like Cobra or Reflektor to right alongside them. It looked like they were primed for a great lead in the championship. And then Ghost Plasma's reign happened. Silverbolt kind of dropped off a little, but not really because they were still consistent. But now the drop-off started. And they're out of the top 5 now in the standings. They're 71 points. And realistically, I don't think they're going to challenge for the championship or even a podium spot. And that hurts to say because it looked like podium definitely should have happened after like race 3 or 4. But it's just, some of the other marbles have just been more consistent and didn't maybe crack under the pressure as much as Silverbolt. So Silverbolt stays in 8th. And hopefully they won't drop off too much because it's been kind of sad to see them in the past few races. In 7th, I've put Crazy Cat's Eye. And Crazy Cat's Eye has had a great 2 races. And after race 6, I think I definitely underrated Crazy Cat's Eye a bit. I had them in 14th, ranked 14th. But I do remember in race 6, I had Wisp of Darkness, Cobra in 16th and 15th. And then, like, in my mind, there was a big gap to Crazy Cat's Eye in 14th because I didn't think anyone else did worse, was as bad as them. But I definitely thought Crazy Cat's Eye was better than the 14 suggested. And they definitely showed that. In race 8, they showed that easily because they got 5th in race 7. And then in race 8, they got 3rd. And in race 7, let's look at their starting positions. In race 7, they had a P1. So 5th isn't great, but it's not bad either. 5th from any starting position is good, at least, if not great. And in race 8, they had P16 because they started P1. And from P16, they pulled a Wisp of Darkness, but even better, and got up to third. And so, really, Crazy Cat's Eye just completely proven me wrong. They are one of the best marbles. I'm pretty sure Dolphin, if you know Dolphin on the Discord, he's mentioned that he keeps mentioning that Crazy Cat's Eye, if they just don't DNF as much, they'd be a championship contender. And I'm inclined to agree. Like, Crazy Cat's Eye, they've DNF'd a couple times, at least, in this season. Happened in last season too. But they definitely have the pace to win races and get podiums, and we've seen it in the past 2 races. And they've rose up to 7th. And in 6th, after Crazy Cat's Eye, 6th is Pollo Loco. Pollo Loco, of course, race 8, great race, one of the best races they've had in a long time. I mean, first win since 2017, race 6, I think, when they had that great duel with red number 3. I'm pretty sure that was their last race win, not counting the B League, of course. But yeah, I remember distinctly saying before race 8, I'm not confident. I said that I wasn't confident in Pollo Loco from a good starting position, holding a good position and converting it to a victory. We've seen Pollo Loco do really well from poor starting positions before, but for a while now, we haven't really seen them maintain a top spot. And I couldn't be proven more wrong by Pollo Loco. And I'm really glad because they're my second favorite Marble Rally marble, of course. But let's talk about race 7 before we go into further detail about race 8. They had in race 7 they didn't have a good start. They didn't have a good starting position. They had 12th, and they didn't finish because after they nudged Cool Moody cheekily off the course in race 7 near the end, they also DNF'd pretty quickly after that, and they were in a good position. So that race 7 was an example of how Pollo Loco could take a starting spot like P12 and get all the way to the top. And if they finished that race, it would have been a great performance. But it wasn't to be. But in race 8, it definitely was, because they started P5, got the best jump off the gate pretty much. Superball got like the slight lead at the beginning, but as far as the scoring graphic, the graphics, as far as that was concerned, Pollo Loco led this race from start to finish, and it was just perfect. And so that's why they rose from, after race 6, they were in 6th as well, because they were pretty consistently high up. They dropped to 8th after race 7 because they had a poor race, because they crashed out. And then they're back to 6th. And the only reason they're not higher is because the top 5, I think, have separated themselves from the rest. And in 5th is the marble right behind Pollo Loco in race 8, and that's Amethyst. Amethyst, the rookie marble. Rookies are always good in Sand Marble Rally, it seems like, compared to the Marble League. And Amethyst is no exception. They won their first race, and aside from the first race, you may be inclined to think that Amethyst hasn't been doing much outside of that until this race, but I think they've been pretty consistent. And after race 6, Amethyst was 4th because of their consistency, and I dropped them to 6th because in race 7, they were one of the 5 DNFs. That makes sense. That's why I dropped them under Ducktape and under Silver Bolt. Actually, Silver Bolt was already under Slimer, because Slimer got the win. And Amethyst, they started P13 in race 7, so it wasn't a good starting position wasted, but it was still not the race they wanted. But race 8, starting from P4, I think, yeah, P4, they got 2nd place. And it was one of the best starting positions for sure, but you still need skill to convert that to a podium as high as P2. And Amethyst did that, and right now they are in 5th with 76 points, only 2 points behind Ducktape, only 8 points behind Slimer in 3rd. I definitely think they're in the podium hunt. They do need, I think, at least another podium in race 9, or like, let's see their starting position. I'm not sure what their starting position is. Their starting position is 9th. And so they're starting 9th in race 9, 8th in race 10. So they don't really have one race where they can really capitalize, but they need to get top half in race 9 if they want to challenge for the championship, because Ghost Plasma with 98 points, they're still over, they're 22 points over Amethyst. So Amethyst really needs to do well for the championship. But as far as the rankings are concerned, they've done a great job. They're in 5th. And the only reason they're not higher is because Ducktape in 4th in the rankings. They've stayed there, but they've been great as of late too. Ducktape in race 6. Actually, Ducktape in race 6, they DNF, so they didn't have a great race. So after race 6, Ducktape was in 5th, and I think they dropped before that. But then in race 7, they rose up again because they got the silver, and they got it by starting 3rd, so good starting position, but didn't DNF. They stayed out of Silverbolt's way, out of the way of the marbles that did DNF, and they just didn't manage to beat Slimer, and they got 4th. And Ducktape, I think this season has shown that Ducktape really is a top marble, and just going out of the kayfabe a little, we know that Ducktape's not the same marble as in 2018, which was the only year they did bad, because as the blue Ducktape, the blue marble, they got 16th, I think, overall. But then in the 2019 showdown, well, firstly in the 2019 qualifiers, they were in the wildcard race and they got 3rd, so they were just off qualifying, and had that just been like a normal qualifier race, I think they would have qualified. But then in the showdown, they had like the most consistent, like 4th, 5th, 4th, or something like that. And then in season 5, they were like, they did really well. And it seemed like a surprise for a lot of people, myself included, but really we haven't ever seen this purple Ducktape do bad. And season 6 has kind of confirmed that they're just off the top, like, S-tier marbles for me. That being Ghost Plasma, Superball, Slimer, Dragon's Egg, still S-tier in my opinion. But yeah, Ducktape in 4th. So I think Amethyst is very close to them, because Amethyst has also been really good recently. But Amethyst, I don't have the historical data of Amethyst to confirm that, to be like as confident that they'll be as good as Ducktape in the final 2 races, because these two purple marbles have been very good this season. Ducktape has been very good all the time, even before this season. And so I just have a bit more confidence in Ducktape. And also, if we look at their starting position, they're starting in P3. So I think Ducktape needs to podium or even win this race 9, because they're not going to be in a good position for race 10 if they want to challenge for the championship. If they want to challenge for a podium overall, I think they should just focus on beating Slimer, because Slimer is starting P1 in race 9. And they are 84 points right now. Ducktape is 78. But Superball is in 91, so that's a much bigger gap to Ducktape than Slimer. Anyway, Ducktape, we talked about their race 7. Race 8, they got 8th, so they didn't have a good starting position in race 8. They had a back row one, but they still got 8th. So race 8 was also pretty good, and so those 2 good races, I think putting them in 4th is fair. And now for 3rd, and unsurprisingly, it is going to be Slimer, my favorite marble. And okay, so Slimer, race 7, I was overjoyed, of course, for them to win, and it was a great race. Slimer, they started P1, not P1, they started P4 in race 7. I'm mistaking it for race 9. But they started P4. They had a great start. They had the best start, I think, and they had the lead. But then they just fell back in the like wide open section. They were just slow. Marbles were getting ahead of them. But what Slimer has is the race smartness. They have the brains and they have the control to not DNF, and that's what they did. They haven't DNF'd. They and Superball are the only 2 marbles that haven't DNF'd this season, and Slimer, while Silverball DNF, while Cool Moody DNF'd, Slimer didn't DNF, they battled with Ducktape, they won the battle with Ducktape in race 7, and they bagged the 20 points. And the second half comeback, hopefully, is on. Race 8, if the second half comeback, like in 2017, Slimer was just a machine in the second half. They were getting like 5 podiums in 7 races. They were getting wins from P20. It was awesome. But doesn't look like it in season 6. Slimer had they were in P4 for race 7, so they were in P13 for race 8. But they still managed to get 7th in race 8. So definitely a good performance by Slimer, as we should expect. Slimer, I think, is one of the most underrated marbles. I think they should be in the conversation with Ghost Plasma, with Superball, for one of the best marbles. Well, okay, I think Superball is the best marble, and I don't think anyone is close. But I think Slimer is very close to Ghost Plasma, if not better. Anyway, Slimer, they're better than Ducktape. Ducktape's really good, but Slimer, I think, is a top 3 Sand Marble Rally marble overall. And the only 2 that are better than them historically, in my opinion, are Ghost Plasma and Superball. And those 2 are first and second, but in what order? Before we move on to second, Slimer, they're starting P1 in race 9. That means they're going to be starting P16 in race 10. And Superball is starting P16 in race 9. They'll be starting P1 in race 10. Ghost Plasma is starting P13 in race 9, and they'll be P4 in race 10. So clearly, Slimer has the edge over those 2 marbles in race 9. They have to convert that. If they want to claim the championship, if they want to beat Ghost Plasma and Superball, they have to like win, or they have to podium at least. Third, it can't be worse than third for the championship, because Ghost Plasma and Superball are going to be right there, unless they DNF, which I could see Ghost Plasma DNFing. I can't see Superball DNFing. Superball is the best marble, just in general, but they're also the best marble at not DNFing. They have had 1 career DNF, but we'll go into Superball in a bit. So Slimer, they need a good result, but to hold off Ducktape too, they also need to hold off Ducktape if they want to just maintain the podium. I think podium is much more manageable. They're better than Ducktape. I think they will beat Ducktape for the podium, but I don't think it's really tough to see. It's really tough to tell if they'll actually challenge for the championship, even P2, because of Superball and P2. But yeah, and anyway, enough about Slimer. We're going to move on to second. Now, before we go into second, Ghost Plasma and Superball. Ghost Plasma, 3 wins in a row, of course. Superball, better overall, in my opinion, historically. They got the win in race 6. And I think they've been better recently. I'm putting Ghost Plasma, for the first time in a while, Ghost Plasma is not going to be ranked first. Ghost Plasma has dropped to second. They were in first after race 7. Despite not that great of a race, and we'll get into that, Ghost Plasma, race 7. I still felt like, they won race 3, 4, 5. They had a great race 6 as well. Started first, finished 4th. Not clearly as good as their 3 wins, but still really good. And I just couldn't not put Ghost Plasma first after race 7. But they DNF'd in race 8. And Superball capitalized. And Superball, I think, is going to do enough to win the championship. Let's look at race 7 for Ghost Plasma. They started 9th. And the start of this race was definitive for how Ghost Plasma race was, and why Ghost Plasma is in second place. If this didn't happen, Ghost Plasma would still probably be ranked first, because what happened in race 7? If you look at the beginning of race 7, it started in 9th, about the middle of the back row. And as the blocks go down, everyone goes. And for a moment, Ghost Plasma is just staying there. Sometimes you see in previous seasons, a marble just gets stuck in the starting gate, and then they have to go. I think El Capitan once in 2019, some other marbles before for sure. And It happened to Ghost Plasma. And that's exactly what all of the marbles chasing them wanted, because Ghost Plasma was racing from the back. They still had a great recovery up to 7th, I think. Yep, 7th in race 7, and which is partially aided by all the DNFs that were ahead of them. But still, to go from last to 7th, still dangerous, Ghost Plasma is, and still really on form. But it was still one of their worst races of the season. Like, you can't, even if you have good recovery, if you're getting 7th, that's still worse than what you could have if you didn't have a better start. And then in race 8, Ghost Plasma DNF. And what really puts them in second for me is that if it was Superball in their position, if Superball had the 3 wins, if Superball had the poor start in race 7 and was trying to keep their championship lead in race 8, Superball would not DNF. Superball doesn't DNF. They've DNF'd once in their whole San Marble Valley career in race 9 in season 5. Great race, by the way. One of my favorite races of all time. But aside from that, they've never DNF. Ghost Plasma, rather, for a good competitor, I think they DNF a bit more than they would like. And I could see them DNFing another time in the final 2 races. Superball, I couldn't. In race 8, well, let's look at their starting positions. In race 7, they started 9th. It's a back row for sure. Not that it really matters for Ghost Plasma. In race 8, they started 8th, so it's front row. So still better. And because it's better, DNFing was kind of a waste of a position for Ghost Plasma. And now if we look at the standings, Ghost Plasma 98, Superball 91, 7-point difference. That could easily be made up in race 9. Ghost Plasma starting 13th, Superball starting 16th. So I'd say really both of these marbles, they're still very capable of doing good from poor positions. Superball, in my opinion, is the greatest of all time. I think some people get ahead of themselves saying Ghost Plasma is the greatest of all time. When you consider 2017, 2018, Superball doesn't have that. They've literally never finished lower than 3rd overall, and that was with red number 3's unfair advantage. But anyway, so Ghost Plasma 2nd, Superball, of course, 1st. Let's talk about Superball. Superball in race 7, of course, in race 6, by the way, Superball got the win, and I think that's what made me put them in second. Yes, because after race 5, I put Superball in 3rd, and then after race 6, that win was good enough to get them 2nd, and really, the only reason they weren't in 1st, because their Superball, their marble as good as Superball, was because Ghost Plasma was coming off like the best 3 race you could possibly have. But now Superball in race 7, they got 8th. And where did they start? Superball in race 7. They started back row, just off Ghost Plasma. Ghost Plasma started 9th, P9, and Superball starting P11. So worst starting position. They finished right under Ghost Plasma. They had about the same kind of race, Ghost Plasma and Superball. Ghost Plasma definitely a bit more impressive because they started from the back after having a slow start. But when you look at the overall picture, Ghost Plasma and Superball had a relatively similar race in race 7. And then in race 8, Superball started P6 because they started P11 in race 7. They started P6 in race 8, and they finished 4th. This is about what I'd expect from Superball. Like, if not the podium, they will be right up there for 4th, and they gained 12 points on Ghost Plasma, and are right behind them. I'm gonna predict the podium based on like, how good the marbles are, how good I think the marbles are, their starting positions, because Superball has P1 for the finale. I'm predicting Superball to win the championship. I'm predicting Ghost Plasma to still hold off everyone else for 2nd because of their lead and their Ghost Plasma. And I think Slimer will hold on for 3rd, hopefully at least. and I think they're good enough to do it. So that's a bit of a boring top 3, but those top 3, Superball, Ghost Plasma, and Slimer, in that order, maybe switch Ghost Plasma and Slimer, they're the top 3 best marbles coming to the season. Definitely the top 3 best marbles after the season, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm kind of glad that it looks like these 3 marbles, it's going to be a fight between them. If not Slimer, at least Superball and Ghost Plasma. And I really hope it goes down to the wire. But yeah, that's going to be it for the power rankings for race 7 and race 8. This got pretty long, 50 minutes. Hopefully when I do this next week, it won't be as long because we'll have just one race to cover. And I won't have to do as long of an intro as well. But yeah, if you've listened this long, I'm really thankful. Thank you very much, because I'd say this is still better than nothing. And also, I know I'm posting this on the Ramen Powder Marbles YouTube channel, which is the channel I use for my own competition, the Quadrilla Marble League. And I know that the Team Quadrilla Marble League in Season 3, it's been a while before Zone Collision has really... It's been a huge gap between events. And I don't want to confirm this, but it is likely that I'm not going to be able to get videos out for the QML, the Quadrilla Marble League, until after my final exams, just because of how busy I am. But I'm not confirming that will happen. I'm just saying that's probably what will happen. But anyway, that's going to be it. I'm going to wrap up now because this has gone on for way too long. So thank you for hearing me waffle. I will be waffling, not as much next week, but hopefully decent amount as well. Superball, Ghost Plasma, and Slimer. Hopefully Slimer can do it in race 9, because this is when they need to do it. If it's not now, if Slimer doesn't podium, if they do worse than Ghost Plasma and Superball, then I think it's over. We're not winning the championship. 3rd is probably the best we can do after a race 9 like that. But if Slimer pulls out the second half comeback in race 9, I'm going to be so happy, and I really hope they will be in contention going to the final. Anyway. That's going to be it for the power rankings. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.